Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. My name is Adam, and it is Misham Frostcolt II. And yes, I am early. I figure if we're just going to do this anyway, why wait 10 more minutes when I'm already ready? Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but I'm still going to get into this, all right? Give a quick shout out to Lewis Lockett. I know you put in these comments earlier, I think yesterday or this morning. I just haven't had an opportunity to get to them. But I will say that I kind of like that chapter. Like, I really kind of do. We're going to get into it here in just a second. But for those of you not looking at the chat, he just mentioned about reading the Lord Soth chapter and how it's sort of dark and nightmarish. Hey, Alex. Thanks for joining live. Appreciate you. Now, I'm going to be giving you my spoiler review of Dragons of a Vanished Moon. This is my perspective only, and if yours differs, or if you just want to sort of expound on some of the different ideas within this, or maybe the entirety of the trilogy, since this closes out the War of Souls trilogy, put your comments in the live chat, or you throw them in the comments after the fact, and eventually I'll get around to those. But usually the way this flows, as smoothly as it does ever flow, I suppose, is that I give you my pre-written review, and then I just sort of riff on whatever you have to say and just, you know, try to touch on some plot points or some characters that maybe I didn't clarify enough in the review itself. So this is supposed to be a bit of a back and forth, a little bit of fun, and hey, let's be honest, at least you're not at work right now. And if you are, sorry, man. Sorry about that. I'd like to take a second and thank the members of this YouTube channel, invite you to consider becoming a member if you're not already. It goes a long way to helping me continue creating these episodes and stuff. So let's go ahead and dive into this. And if you, again, this is spoiler. So if you have not read this and you don't want to know the end of the War of Souls trilogy, don't watch this. Come back some other time after you've read it or whenever you're ready. Because, oh, you're working, Alex. Sorry. Whenever you're ready, so that we can, you know, you can figure out other people's thoughts, because that's one thing that I find actually enriches the reading experience, is not just reading it, taking in whatever the authors are putting out there and just processing it and putting the book on the shelf. It's actually exploring the ideas and the themes of this wonderful story and the different characters that the authors took so much time in developing, and returning to some of the other characters that we hadn't seen in a while. Except for Taz. He's like in every novel ever written, which is kind of weird. All right, we'll get into it. Book 1 opens with a retelling of the death of Goldmoon, but this time it's from Dalamar and Palin's perspectives. After Goldmoon dies, they know that they are in danger, but before they have time to do anything about it, the Dark Knights are pounding on the door. Mina eventually busts it down, and as they try to cast spells to defend themselves, the magic is stripped from them, and they're both killed by Mina. Now, this is a terrible end for now. The two rather fantastic characters, but being killed by Mina and Takesis is far better than falling from a Valenwood tree, in my humble opinion. She ends up raising them from the dead as zombies and has them sitting at the end of her cart when she brings Goldmoon encased in amber and puts it on the cart as well, and she is once again restored to beauty in death. Goldmoon's spirit traveled to Wanderer, her and Riverwind's son, and told him to travel south. And it is where he actually ended up meeting Gilthaz and the Qualinesti elves as they were traveling through the Plains of Dust, coming close to death in the journey. Wanderer promises aid and tells Gilthaz that Silvanesti has fallen to the Dark Knights. Now we travel over to Tasselhoff and Conundrum, who are time traveling into the very distant past, after Conundrum has fixed the device of time journeying, and they actually meet Huma and Magus themselves. Now this is huge, as it actually means that they stitched back together the River of Time. This means that there is hope for the gods and the dragons to return, and for them to possibly overcome the insurmountable odds that is the one god, or Takesis, as we have realized. And I totally just lost my place. Let's see. Samovul has taken over control of Qualinesti and offers land to all who enter his service on behalf of the Dark Knights. So Qualinesti is now in occupied territory, much like Silvanesti. Back in Kelendros's lair, Mirror and Ski are actually talking as Ski is dying, and Ski reveals his past to Mirror and that Takhisis trapped the silver dragons when they went looking for the other gods. Takhisis used Ski to bring the other dragon overlords and has been using their totems for power. Malastrix appears, intending to take Ski's totem, and finding him alive, patiently waits for him to die as Ski attacks her, harming her just ever so slightly, and then she destroys him immediately, tearing his corpse to pieces. This is such a better death for Kelendros than slowly bleeding out from Mina's attack. When Malys takes the totem and leaves, Mirror looks for water and food in the dragon form, and Razor, Marshal Meaden's blue dragon, shows up and questions Mirror about Ski, Malys, and Takhisis. Razor is loyal to Takhisis, but his loyalty is fading as she allowed Razor's mate to be killed by the overlords. They leave to go get answers with Mirror as a human on Razor's back. Now, going back to Gerard, he offers to be a spy and infiltrate the Dark Knights so that the Knights of Solamnia will have some inside intel prior to Mina's attacking Sanction, the Knights' last stronghold. The Order isn't thrilled with the idea of a spy, but they know that they need every bit of help they can get, so Gerard travels to Salanthus, meets a kender who reveals that Mina is looking for Tasselhoff. Clearly, Takhisis wants Taz killed and to gain control of the device, as it's the only key to stopping her. Gerard enters Salanthus secretly, intentionally gets himself imprisoned so they can pretend to still be a Dark Knight who brought Odila to Mina. Now, this is the most ridiculous scheme I could ever imagine. First of all, they already know what Mina's going to do. She told them when she took Salanthus. It makes no sense that first of all, she would tell all of the surviving Knights of Solamnia from Salanthus, I'm going to invade Sanction, so go get ready for it. And then they go to Sanction, and now they're like, I wonder what Mina's going to do. Let's get a spy in there to find out what Mina's going to do. And what is Mina going to do? Exactly what she said she was going to do. It's the stupidest plot point ever. And to compound that, he can break into the city, and his plan was that after he broke out of jail, or after he got out of jail, he was going to sneak over to where he stashed some Knights of Naraka armor. Well, if he was going to do that anyway, why didn't he do that from the start? Why even get captured in jail at all if you could just find Knight of Naraka armor and go about the city incognito? Again, totally ridiculous, pointless plot points. It doesn't make any sense, but what it does do is allow him to see Palin and Dalamar and ultimately have Galdar take him from jail directly to Mina, which again isn't really necessary because as soon as he does, Mina realizes him for who and what he is and just says, yeah, we're going to attack Sanction. So there you have it. So chapters were written. Chapters, plural, were written about this for no reason because it only ended up telling us what we already knew. It served no real purpose. It was really strange. That being said, when he is in jail, Takhisis is actually keeping the souls of Palin and Dalamar tethered to their bodies, but Dalamar actually severs his cord and roams freely. Palin decides to try to communicate with Gerard, but is unable to. Gerard discovers from Odila, who entered Salanthus and was brought to Mina, wanting to learn from the one god, that Takhisis is testing undead soldiers with Palin and Dalamar for the coming Battle of Sanction. Now, this is a plot point which never shook out. It never happened. They seed this idea that Takhisis is actually using Palin and Dalamar as test subjects so then she can raise this undead army and then have ultimately Lord Soth, lead this undead army and use it to actually invade and attack Sanction. But it never happened. So why did you even bring it up? It's so ridiculous. This book is over 600 pages, I think. You could have cut like a third of it off with the plot points and the story beats that went nowhere. Just totally poof in the air. They were pointless. Okay, so Mina is very open with her plans, and when Galdar brings Gerard before her, convinced he is a spy, Mina tells him her plans and enters him into her service. Gerard and Odila discuss the one god, and eventually Odila decides to leave, but she's being held captive by Takhisis. Gerard should have left, but ends up staying for Odila and travels with Mina across Mina's army to Sanction. Razor and Mirror travel to Silvanesti as beggars and discover the truth of Mina moving to attack Sanction from Gerard on his way out. They travel after the army to learn more. Meanwhile, Gilthanas arrives in Silvanesti and meets Elhana, who reveals that Silvanost ran after Mina. He travels to Silvanesti too, and then to Sanction after her. Gilthas is sworn to secrecy, and the Silvanesti only listen to Elhana because they believe that Silvanost, their king, is with her actively. They don't know that he left. If they did know the truth that he left, then they would reject her leadership because, again, she's a dark elf. Gilthas is welcomed in, and they know that they need to attack the Dark Knights, who are outnumbered and weak, but without Silvanost to lead them, Elhana can't do anything. She sent Samar after Sylvan to bring him back. Taz and Conundrum travel to the Temple of Naraka during the War of the Lance and see Raceland and Erican. Hey, Silverworth, thanks for joining live. What's up, Charlie Ocho? It's great to see you. Yeah, I'm going to get to that, Charlie. That's a good one. Something ends up holding Taz back from revealing himself to Raceland as he sees him, but he doesn't know what it is. Then we see the gods of Krynn meeting to discuss the lost world, and Raceland tells them about Takesis seeing it and that he heard Taz and can find him again. They agreed to wait to reclaim the world as Takesis is stronger right now, stronger than ever, and they, as the gods bereft of all their followers, are weak. They allow Raceland to try and connect with the world. This is so frustrating for me, because why would Raceland, who is a spirit who has no magic at all, because it was taken from him supposedly in the Dragons of Summer Flame, right? When he came out of the Abyss. A spirit with no magic at all, how is he able to find Taz and the old world, but none of the actual gods can find it? Or any of the dragons that went searching for it? And the other weird thing about this is the only good dragons they talk about are gold and silver. Where are the bronze? Where are the copper? Like, where's the platinum? Like, we're missing dragons here, and no one's, like, even talking about them. It's really weird. Tasselhoff is transported to the Citadel of Light's maze, where he leaves Conundrum, and is teleported to Dergard Keep, where Lord Soth talks with him as Mina enters. She tells him that Takesis wants him to lead her army of the dead. But Soth, much like Ski before him, has been away from her for so long that he recognizes how she lied to him, how she never honored her promises, and now he no longer fears her or oblivion. He has finally atoned for his mistakes, and as Mina furiously leaves, Lord Soth is made mortal and destroyed by Takesis. Taz is held out of the exchange by a black cloak that smells of rose petals. We all know who that is. After the Chaos War, I have to admit I'm a bit tired of Raceland coming back to save the day. Surely there are other heroes that are alive that can fill his role. If Goldmoon's voice was able to be heard by Paladine a universe away, why can't the gods who are actively searching for the universe, or a dragon who is searching for the gods, be the one to adopt the role he's playing here? It makes no sense. Gerard is assigned to protect Silvanost, who finally caught up to the army. Mina shows no affection for him, and he finally seems to accept that she will never love him, but he is a servant of the one god. After the quick and hardly mentioned at all defeat of Sanction, he is placed in a prison cell for his own protection and gives his ring and cloak to Gerard so that he can convey to Samar, and by proxy his mother, that he is in fact dead. On Gerard's way out of the city, Galdar stops him. They both admit their roles, and Galdar says that everything Gerard is doing is the will of Takesis. She wants him to get the elves and the Solamnic Knights to come to the city to witness her return on the night of the Pale Eye. Again, plot hole, because what folds is not Takesis allowing the knights to come and watch it. It's her actively working against Gerard from him actually going to report to the Knights of Solamnia. So does Takesis want him there, or does he not? And in the end, the way that she brings everyone there belies the need for any messenger in the first place. Just so strange. It makes no sense. They're just sort of bouncing around. All right, the souls of the dead steal Malstrix's skull totem, which is being used by Takesis to enter the world. She plans to enter Goldmoon's corpse and rule immortal on Krynn with Mina as her live army general. Dalamar tells Malys about the Dark Queen taking and using her totem and asks to be granted his body should Malys defeat Mina. She agrees. Then Dalamar travels back to Sanction and tells Mina that he will rule the army of dead for Takesis if he gets his body back. She promises not only the body, but magic as well, that he once controlled, and if his body, only if he destroys Palin's plans. Palin met with Razor and Mira and is making plans to stop Tachesis from returning. Now, she's using the totem in order to return in the same way that she was using the keystone during the War of the Lance in order to return to like the mortal plane of Krynn, right? But again, totally pointless plot point because she ended up coming back anyway at the very end. Why did you need the skull totems if you could just do it in the first place? And then if you couldn't just do it without the skull totems, how did you come in the end? Total nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. What's crazy is I rated this already on Goodreads right after I finished reading it because I had such a good feeling about it. And now that I'm reading my own review, I'm actually starting to not like it anymore. It's crazy. All right, let's see. Samar returns to Silvanesti with the news of Sylvan's capture, and Alhana admits that she's been lying to everyone and employs them all to stand next to the Solamnic Knights and stop Tachesis and save her son, their king. Gilthaz warns them that they should reclaim Silvanesti from the Dark Knights before they leave, to make sure that they have a home to return to. This is a decision, the wisest move that Gilthaz has ever made, and it is frustrating knowing what's to come in the face of the decision to ignore him. There are so many poor decisions the elves make to their own detriment because of tradition and reaction, when they're supposed to be these thoughtful and patient beings. This action to attack Sanction is being fueled by Tachesis, and it only goes to show the true might of the Dark Queen when she is the only god. The elves leave for Sanction, and in their absence, Bloodsea Minotaurs sail the river and eliminate the remaining elven resistance to reinforce the Dark Knights. The chromatic dragons flee as Malys is rumored to attack Sanction. Odila prays to Tachesis for aid, and Mina is intent on fighting Malys, and Galdar enters with a dragonlance from the Tomb of the Last Heroes Samaval raided. Galdar tells Mina that he wants to join her and she says that he can fight if he can find a dragon, because, you know, of course, she's not going to deny his help. He's her most trusted advisor. Meanwhile, Mira and Razor have snuck into the temple, and Razor actually leaves to tell Galdar that he will, in fact, take him into battle. Again, this is the blue dragon that belonged to Marshal Meaden. Mira stays and plots the downfall of the totem with Palin. Malys arrives, and Mina meets her in the air with an undead dragon and the Dragonlance. Galdar and Razor are with her, and they all battle. At the moment of defeat of Malys, Tachesis is pulled by Dalamar from Mina's aid as her totem and Goldmoon are being destroyed by Mira's magic. The citizens attack Mira, and Odila rescues him, and they fly to the Solamnic Knights Council. Tachesis turned Gerard around in his ride to the Knights Council, which again makes no sense as she supposedly wanted the Elves and Knights to come to Sanction, but he was outed by an innkeeper as a Solamnic Knight in the Dark Knight's territory, and a platoon came to investigate. Sorry, I'm stepping myself here. He was rescued by Racelin's advice. So Racelin transported himself to the Krynn in mortal form, was able to manipulate objects and stuff, and again, in pure Racelin fashion, taunt Gerard. How is he doing this? He's dead. Like, I don't this whole idea of what death means is lost on me in this world only when it pertains to Racelin. Everyone else, when they die, they're dead. But Racelin seems to be able to be brought back because he's Racelin, because the authors love him. Taz is chained to a bunch of other kender by the knights, which come in. When did that happen? They told that... There is no point in this entire story that Racelin and Taz were come across by any Dark Knights. We left Taz and Racelin in Dareguard Keep. So how did Taz get chained up with a bunch of other kender? Guess it doesn't matter. Galdar rescues Taz and the Knights hear that Mina killed Malys and died in the battle. So all of the Knights rush to Sanction because there's now a power vacuum and they're all vying for control. Galdar and Taz use the Device of Time journey to travel to the Knights Council and meet Odila and Mira there, who agree to find the missing metallic dragons to help the elves to get to Sanction, and then to fight the returned chromatic dragons in Sanction. They all disappear with the device of time journeying. They arrive in a frozen plain where the metallic dragons sleep. Taz busts through a frozen wall that kept the dragons sleeping and fell into oblivion, only to have Mira grab him just in time. This whole sequence is very strange. At no point does it explain how these frozen walls are able to make the dragons sleep, or that the frozen walls are what makes the dragons sleep, only that there is powerful magic here that is making them sleep. And then Taz just thinks, I'm going to Kool-Aid man it through this wall. And literally that's what he does. He's just like, ah! Like flailing his arms and screaming, smack into and through the wall. And that is all it was required to, if you could just throw a kender at a wall and break it and like free all the dragons, why not throw a rock? Or use a hammer, or a sword, or a helmet, or a shield, or a breastplate, or anything other than a being. But, again, strange. Anyway, Mira says that the dragons need to discuss whether or not they're going to go back to Krynn and join the fight, as they've already sacrificed a lot. This struck Taz to his core, and he realizes that he must go back to get stepped on by chaos. He says goodbye to Galdar, telling him to fix the Tomb of the Last Hero's lock, and Galdar finally saw him as the hero that he is. And this moment, I thought, was brilliant. Taz left, and once again, I shed a tear on that doorknob of a kender's fault for having me shed a tear. I don't know why, but for some reason, him finally, and he did it already in the second book in this trilogy, but now in the third that he's finally coming to the decision again that he does need to, in fact, go die. Kind of made me a little sad. All right. So the elven caravan became surrounded by ogres, and as they were attacking, the dragons came and rescued them. They then flew to Sanction, where Mina, shocked and totally unknowing what to do, focuses on returning to the Temple of Durgast so that Takhisis can return. Again, how is she returning because the totem was destroyed? I guess it doesn't matter anymore. Silvanost and the now mortal Paladine follow Galadar and Mina into the sacrificial arena where the enemies of the one god were transported. That's right. So the entire Galdar and Gerard conversation is now pointless because Takhisis just teleported literally everyone there. And I couldn't help but think of the scene, reading this just 2 days ago, I couldn't help but thinking of the scene in the last Skywalker film that came out, that Disney put out. It was like the last sequel trilogy film where Emperor Palpatine is sitting there and there's this whole arena of Sith that, who are they? Who knows? Who cares? It's just an arena full of Sith that just sort of exist on Exiled. That's what this reminded me of. Takhisis was just like standing there like, ha, I didn't need a portal, surprise, and then teleports every one of her enemies there and they're all just sort of like stuck, unable to do anything. It was the most OP moment of this entire saga of novels, and it made no sense at all. So, Mina declared supremacy over her body, and offered her body to the Dark Queen after she broke the Dragonlance, then that she killed Malys with. Takhisis accepts the offer to take over her body. Okay, so this is the part that I don't understand. Mina is like, well, she's not in this plane of existence and she needs a body, but she also needed the power of the totem, right? So X out the power of the totem. Did she only need a body? And then is it just that they needed a body of a willing person? I'm sure there are remnant priests of Takhisis out there that she could have just been like, hey, bink, 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 I'm going to need your body. And they're like, oh, you're back. This is awesome. Yeah, go ahead and take it. Like there's so many people that worshipped the evil gods that would have willingly done this, but if that's all that was required, that's what I'm saying. It's strange. So Takhisis is like, okay. And like flies down on a chariot, and I'm just imagining this moment where it's like that Michelangelo Sistine Chapel God and Adam touching fingers. Like she's going to touch it, and she's almost touching it, and it's almost there, and then Paladin's like, and just like smacks Mina's hand down. He's like, hey, you can't come back because you did a bad thing and we're all here now. And so all of the people that she teleported there to witness her glory were now sent right back, presumably where they were in the first place. And then all of the gods just came and took their places, right? So the entire pantheon of the Krynn's gods are sitting there watching. Paladine is now mortal because he sacrificed himself so that Takhisis could now be mortal. And Takhisis is like, bull, you would never give up your life. Meanwhile, he's right in front of you. You can't tell that he's not an immortal god by looking at him? Like, certainly you should be able to feel the power or lack thereof emanating off of him, right? The vacuum of power that he once held. Anyway, she's then like, Mina, you did this to me! Die! And like goes to kill Mina. Galdar steps in and, very Star Wars fashion, cuts his arm off right where the original one was healed back in. So Galdar is now bleeding out on the ground, saved Mina. Silvanost sees the opportunity, grabs the half of the Dragonlance, and in the only moment of clarity, since before Mina really came to him, he returns to being the true hero that he should have been, that Takhisis feared that he would become, which is why she made him into the wimp and sort of worthless human or worthless elf that he became, and throws the Dragonlance and pierces through her body, killing her. Mina runs to her completely upset, just devastated, and looks up at Silvanost, this annoying kid that's been following her around all over Anslon that she wants nothing to do with, and she just murders him. As Paladine starts to go in to like stop her from killing him, you know, sort of sacrificing himself in the same way that Galdar did for Mina, Sargonis was like, little mortal former god, I want this vengeance. You know, he killed our queen. Even if she did bad things, we want to see him pay. Which I totally dig. So Paladine Nalvathonis returns Sylvan's dead body to Alana and blessed Gilthaz as the ruler of the exile elves. The novel explains the political areas of Anslon in the Age of Mortals and leaves its future open-ended for players to define, for now, because again, the Dark Disciple trilogy is next. This was a beautiful ending that, again, I know I say this a lot, hit me harder this time than the first time I read it. When Raistlin says that he needs to return to his brother and friends because Tanis is impatient, it hit me in the feels hard. Because in my head, I'm just like, Karaman and Raistlin are going to be reunited and everything, and Tanis he's like my favorite hero of the Lance. And him just to throw out the name all willy-nilly, I just felt like I got cold-cocked. Just like, pop! Remember me? And I was like, oh, Tanis is waiting too. He's like, that damned black robe wizard won't get off his tuchus and join us. I just love that. Anyway, knowing that all the heroes of the Lance are moving into the afterlife together kind of put a beautiful capstone to the chronicles and the characters that these two authors have loved, been frustrated with, and regretfully killed for the sake of this story. This righted the wrongs of the Fifth Age by explaining how it became the Fifth Age, and returned Krynn to the fans, finally. Now, this was a wonderful story that I'm very happy to have reread, and I would never have done it if it weren't for this channel, so thank you all so much for your attention. I really do appreciate it. If you are a Dragonlance fan, read this novel and trilogy. If you're a Fifth Age fan, everything you loved is still here, with fewer Dragon Overlords, but it brings back what the Fourth Age fans loved as well. For me, this was a very successful uniting of fan bases and ages for the gamers out there. All right, so what do you guys have to say about this? You like the transformation of the Minotaur character and what happened with his arm. I want to talk about Galdar really quick because you bring up a good point. Throughout this whole story, and it started with the last novel, is that Galdar was coming to terms that he didn't care, and arguably the first novel, he didn't really care about the one god at all. He only cared about Mina. And because she was the one, as far as he was concerned, that brought his arm back and gave him purpose in his life. Up until that point, he was just a scout, and no one even really cared about him. She not only brought purpose to her life, but victory. And that's something that Minotaurs really, really love. They love the martial lifestyle, and they love seizing victory and battle. But he just sort of grew to love her as a person, you know, and respect her as a person. And the love came from the respect, which is what I actually really appreciated. He learned that he didn't like the one god at all. After he found out who he was, he liked her even less. He had to act like he liked her around Mina, and even then he failed at it. And ultimately, when he went and told Gerard about how he was doing Takhisis's bidding ultimately, whether no matter what he wanted to do or what he tried to do, it was always what Takhisis wanted him to do. I never understood why he did that. He didn't even like Takhisis. I mean, I understand that he wanted to kill Gerard because he was a Solamnic Knight and he didn't trust him. I get that. But why would then he... Why wouldn't you just say that about Mina? If you are honestly devoted to Mina, use her as the reason, not Takhisis. And especially when that's clearly not the truth, because that's not how it played out anyway. It was just really strange. But yeah, I agree. And especially in the Dark Disciple trilogy, I like where Gerard ended. I thought it was a really great moment. So also, Raistlin, Master of Time, was interfering with events in the timeline. He was the one, not the gods, that found the world after Takhisis stole it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's not the Master of Past and Present. He's dead. If he was alive, when he was alive, he was the Master of Past and Present. But he died. His soul went on the journey, and he was just being held back because he was waiting for Krynn to join him. So he's no longer the Master of Past and Present. He's a spirit. Which makes, and I understand that he was using he referred to it as the, what was the phrasing? The channels of chaos, or it's like the remnant streams of chaos in the universe. And that's how he heard Tasselhoff. And that's how he connected with Tasselhoff. And, you know, from Tasselhoff using the device of time journeying. That's how he connected to Krynn. But if he could do that, and Paladine already heard Goldmoon through space-time, why wouldn't Paladine just be the one to do it? I mean, it wouldn't change anything. You know? I don't know. It puts so much power in Raistlin's hand, and then Raistlin can just become mortal whenever he wants. He can just use any magic and be mortal anytime he wants. What's the point of his death and sacrifice if he can just do whatever he wants? It's hollow, you know? And it means he shouldn't be dead. Because if he can just come back, then he won. He's a god. I don't understand, you know? For me, I thought his death in Legends was perfect. That's where, in my opinion, Raistlin should have just ended. When he came back in Summer Flame, I thought, okay, well, this is an interesting plot twist for the character. He's coming to help, but he can't do any magic. But in the book story, he was doing things that were clearly magical. So, and traveling instantly and just being everywhere at once. So it was like, who the... He was the one that said Takhisis stripped his power from him when he left the Abyss. And yet, he is still doing magical things throughout this whole story. And then he dies again, and you're like, oh, well, this is a beautiful capstone. Now he is finally dead. He comes back for this trilogy and doing magical things again. What? Makes no sense. I like what Silver Wolf says, because Dragonlance. Raistlin uses Tasselhoff and the time device to influence events and people to achieve his goals like he did in past. Yeah, I don't think that's what they intended. I think they just wanted to bring back a familiar character to tie together Kariman's death in the very beginning and to use that familiar character in the same way that they did with Summer Flame. No logic to it, no real rationale, just saying, hey, we brought Taz back, we're killing off all the rest of the heroes, so let's bring this one back in because he's a fan favorite, and Margaret Weis's favorite specifically. So maybe it's Raistlin's dark past and roots that allows Raistlin to sense things she incorporated in. Maybe Takhisis did. Gerard is a good bloke. He stuck out for Odila. I don't even know if I'm saying her name right. It sounds weird. Odila? But yeah, I think Gerard and Odila's relationship in this is the best part of this trilogy. He only met her, I think, in the second book too. But their sort of quasi-sexual banter back and forth is awesome. It's just like two people who have no one that they like. She was burned, he was scorned, and they just sort of found each other, and they're perfect for each other. I just love that. I'm a little bummed they didn't end up together, but her last line of saying, hey, if you're ever going to take a bath in a river, make sure you let me know. I was just like, oh yeah, there's hope there. Didn't notice a lot of the plot holes. I didn't notice it, honestly, until I started writing this review. And then I was like, huh, wait a second. Huh. It was really weird. Evil beings should not be able to wield a dragon lance. That's the other part that drove me nuts, is that Odila, a knight of Solamnia, got blistered hands from touching the dragon lance. But Mina, who is literally an agent for Takesis, was just like, no, that's cool, whatever, I got you. So, was it an evil dragon lance? Did Takesis, in place of the god's divine presence for the artifact, transform it into an evil dragon lance? I assume that's what they were trying to go for. But then, I don't know, does a good dragon lance work on good dragons? I suppose it would. I don't see why it wouldn't. So an evil dragon lance would work against evil. I don't know. That was weird. That was a weird moment too. Yeah. And then when it was broken, like all the magic's gone, I guess. So it's just a spear. So when Silvanost kills Takesis, she was just killed by a spear. I don't know. Like, wouldn't Mina be able to heal her? I understand that I'm gonna do an episode about magic in the Fifth Age, right? Because at the end of this novel, Tracy Hickman goes through this whole appendix diatribe about how magic worked in the Fourth Age and how it works in the Fifth Age and the River of Time and the Passage of Souls and stuff. So I'm going to do a video on that, explaining how he explains why magic in the Fifth Age exists and how it works. And it's not exactly the way that it was led to be believed in sort of previous sources. And because of that, Mina shouldn't be able to heal her, but because, again, it is the Fifth Age as the way that we've known it up until then, she was performing miracles, yes, on behalf of the Dark Queen, but she was empowered with that magic. So the queen's being turned into a mortal doesn't take away her magic, because it's not like she's worshiping Nuitary. You know, it's like taking the way it's described is that the magic is empowered into the planet core, like Krynn itself. So she's actually drawing, yes, from the one god, but that magic is through the planet, which is why everyone else can tap into sorcery and mysticism. So she could have just used that to heal Takesis right then, if it was just a normal spear and not a magical artifact, you know, piece. I don't know. I'm looking way too deep into this than anyone really should, I think. But anyway, so Charlotte racing as god. Well, he succeeded. He did exactly what he wanted. The authors just never said it. You love the trilogy for the reason I just stated. It brought both ages together. That's honestly, and all my complaints about plot holes and stuff like that, that's not really that big of a deal to me, because those tiny little moments don't break the story. They're just weird speed bumps. Ultimately, I think the story is great. I think it paid off everything it set out to pay off, and I really liked it. Like, when TSR asked Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman to come back in and write this trilogy, they had already had a story laid out. You know, Gene Rabe had already mapped everything out. All the other game designers had their ideas on what to do, and they all delivered their stories saying, hey, we want you to write this story. This is our story. This is how we're going to do it. Tracy Hickman, being Tracy Hickman, already knew exactly what he wanted to do when he went to the meeting. So he said, okay, that's a good idea. We could do that. Or how about this? And he laid it all out. Takesis took the world. She's the one empowering Mina. Mina is this new person, and she's going to be doing all this stuff, and this is how the story unfolds. And they were just blown away at the intricacy and the connections. They were like, yeah, that's so much better. We'll do that. Yeah, just go off and write it. So, I don't know. They were scorned by TSR because Dragons of Summer Flame was supposed to be a trilogy. And they cut it down to one novel, which is why it felt so rushed. This should have been 2 or 3 trilogies with the amount of content that was in there. So they were so much thicker than any of the other novels they released, which I actually like, but it just goes to show that I think they took the opportunity and really did as much as they could. So all the little speed bumps that I'm noting would have just expanded it even more, and I think they had to meet some sort of like word count or page count or something. Like, look, this is only a trilogy, guys. You have to cut back. So I think maybe that's what they were doing, is trying to cut back on what they delivered or what they planned to deliver, which would then explain why the ending seemed so much rapider, so much more rapid than the rest of the trilogy thus far. Anyway, that's my thought anyway. Let's see. He's a god. They mentioned that a lot in the books. I don't recall them ever mentioning that, Charlie. I know he wanted to be a god, and in a future, he became a god and killed everything. And then when Kariman came back in Legends and said, look, you're going to be the god of nothing if you keep doing what you're doing, and he like sort of did the mind meld with him and he saw his failure, then he sacrificed himself. Said, look, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. You go out and live. I made a mistake. I'm going to steal the portal from this side. And he was granted rest, as they call it, not death. So he did sacrifice himself and not become a god in Legends. So at what point are you referring to anyone calling him a god? Because after Legends, I don't recall him ever being referred to as a god. And I'm not saying that to be combative. I'm genuinely curious. Because if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected. Great review. Happy you found it the other day. Looking forward to whatever's next. I'll tell you what, a couple reviews. I'll tell you what's coming next. I'm already the first book through in the Dark Disciple trilogy. So that's coming next. And that's a good one, in my opinion, because it is much sexier than anything that was ever written. Ironically so. Let me just put this out there really quick. Tracy Hickman wrote all of the sex scenes in the Chronicles and Legends books because Margaret Weis said that she could not write sex scenes or love scenes. And Tracy Hickman always liked the sort of the boots off sex scenes where you don't really go into any detail. You just sort of say, well, they were taking their boots off the next day, you know, sort of brush over it with the fact that they're undressing. In Dark Disciple, there are some real sexy moments, like genuinely awesome things, like romance novel level stuff, which for Dragonlance, you don't really get. And I kind of dig, especially with who it's involved with and sort of the framing of it all. I think it's really cool, but that's going to be the next review. It's probably next week because it's only like a 300 plus page book, which I'll get through really quick. Plus, I like it, so I'll read it even faster, you know. Anyway, that is it for my review of Dragons of the Vanished Moon by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. Do you believe the author successfully united the disparate fan bases? What do you think of Mina thus far? Only in the War of Souls, because we know what happens next. Do you enjoy these reviews that I'm putting out? You can always let me know in the comments in the live chat, or if you want to shoot me an email, dlsaga@pm.me. I'd like to once again invite you to consider becoming a member of this channel. Again, it goes to help me grab books in order to review, pay for musicians in order to bring the Dragonlance music to life, and just keep up with the fees of having a website and managing all of that. So I do genuinely appreciate you. And if you're not already a member, consider it. It's like $1 to start. Anyway, that is it. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Until next time, Slanjavar.